The road between the red rock flats and the open range was empty when he found her. She was face down in the dust, one arm out, reaching for something that was not there. He dismounted. He crouched beside her and took in the size of her, the green-grey of her skin, the breadth of her shoulders, the stillness of her chest barely moving. He had seen men look this bad after 3 days without water. He said, "My lady." She opened her eyes. What happened next? Neither of them had words for yet. He had heard about the land from a man in a settlement 3 days east, a man who said the owner had gone and left no word, and the bank would take what it was owed, and whatever remained would go cheap. He had not asked what it was like. He had not cared much about the price. He had cared that it was far from where he had been. He bought it for less than it was worth because nothing on it worked. Broken fences, a barn roof with a hole in it you could put a man through, a well with a sound shaft but a rotted rope, fields that had not been planted in so long they had gone to scrub and dry grass, and the grass had gone yellow and brittle in the heat. He had not minded any of that. He had not been looking for something that worked. He had been looking for something to do. The land sat on the edge of the red rock country, where the flats gave way to broken canyon ground, and the brush grew low and pale, and the sky sat very wide overhead. In the morning, the shadow of the eastern ridge stretched long across the yard. By noon, the sun was straight up, and everything was bright and hot and still. By evening, the light came in low and sideways, and the canyon walls lit up orange and deep red, like they were burning from the inside, and then the color drained out of them all at once, and the dark came down fast and cold. He fixed the fences first, board by board, post by post, working his way along the south line, and then the west. The work was simple, and it took all day, and he did not think about anything else while he did it. That was what he had been looking for. Then the barn roof. He patched it with boards from the old fence sections that were too far gone to keep, and it held well enough. Then the rope for the well, and then the trough, and then the gate that had come off its hinges and listed sideways in the yard. Then he broke ground on the near field and planted it, and waited, and something came up. Not much, but something. He could fix fences. He could patch a roof. He could plant in dead soil if it came to that. He had done harder things. He did not let himself think too often about what those things had been. The days ran one into the next, without much to mark them apart. He rose before the light and worked until his hands ached, and then he ate and slept and rose again. He didn't talk much. There was no one to talk to. He had a horse, a grey gelding with a bad temper and good sense, and that was company enough, or close enough. Some nights the silence was so complete it had a sound of its own, but he had stopped noticing. Most evenings he sat on the porch step after supper and watched the dark come up out of the canyon. There was nothing to watch for. He watched anyway. Some mornings he rode out along the track that ran east through the flats, just to move, not looking for anything, not waiting on anything. He had not been looking for anything the morning he found her. He was up before the light most mornings, the way men get who have spent long enough sleeping in places where the dark is not safe. He had not needed to be anywhere at a particular time in 3 years. He rose anyway. The homestead looked different than it had when he bought it. Not different the way a thing looks when you are proud of what you have done. Different the way a thing looks when you have stayed with it long enough. The fences held. The barn was sound. The field had come up 2 seasons running, enough to put back what he took out, and a little more. He had been a soldier once, a long time ago. Not an important one. He had stood where he was told to stand, done what he was told to do, and come back alive when others did not. There had been a good many others. He did not like to think about those. He was good in the field. Still. Patient. Not given to moving before he understood what he was looking at. Those were qualities that had made him useful in a war. They made him quiet here. He did not know sometimes if there was a difference. He had a wife. Had. That was the word that sat wrong, even now, even after. He could say it plainly, and it was still a small wrong thing, like a nail that won't drive flush. She had been alive, and then she was not. The years they had together were not enough, and he had known that while he had them, which had not helped, he had sold the house they lived in, and the furniture inside it, and the horse she had liked best, and he had taken the money and come here, where there was nothing left of her and nothing to remind him. He kept one thing. It was a small stone, no bigger than the pad of his thumb, dark and smooth, the kind a river makes out of ordinary rock over a very long time. She had picked it up on their first winter together, from the bank of a creek they were crossing. She had pressed it into his hand without saying why. He had never asked. It lived now in the breast pocket of his work coat, and sometimes, late at night when the canyon was all dark and quiet, he took it out and held it and put it back without looking at it. It was not comfort. Not quite. More like the opposite of forgetting. That was what he had come here to do. Not to heal. He had stopped waiting for that. He had come to maintain, to get up before the light, work until his hands ached, eat, sleep, and get up again. To fix what was broken in front of him, since he could not fix anything else. Most mornings he managed it without thinking too much. Some mornings were harder. The morning in question started like the rest. He rose before sunup, put water on, did the early chores in the cold. The gelding needed exercise, and the east fence line had a section he had not walked in a while. That was reason enough. He saddled up in the grey half-light and rode out along the track that cut east through the flats toward the red rock and the open range. He was not looking for anything. He was only moving, the way a man moves when staying still is the worse of two bad choices. He had not taken the eastern track in some weeks. That morning, for no reason he could name, he did. The sun was barely up when he saw her. He had been following the eastern track for half an hour, the gelding picking its way through the flat ground at an easy walk, the canyon walls still in shadow off to the left, the sky going pale ahead of the sun. Then the road bent around a low formation of red rock, and he saw something in the dust ahead. Not a rock. Not a brush pile that had blown across. Something too large and too still. He stopped the gelding. He looked at it for a long moment before he moved. She was face down, one arm out and ahead of her, as if she had been reaching for the next step and simply stopped. She was the largest person he had ever seen on that road, which was saying something, because the road saw freight men and soldiers and sometimes the big men from the settlements to the north who worked the mines. She was bigger than any of them. He could see that even at this distance. He could see the green-grey of her skin in the early light, the dark hair splayed around her head, the sheer mass of her. He knew what she was. He touched his heels to the gelding and rode up slow. She did not move. He stopped 6 feet short, dismounted, dropped the reins. The gelding stood. He crouched down beside her and looked. She was tall, longer than a man by a full head. The breadth of her shoulders was remarkable. Her hands on the ground in front of her were broad and scarred, and the nails were broken. She was dressed in the remains of clothes that had been good once, now worn through at the knees and elbows, stiff with dust and days of road. The soles of her boots were nearly gone. He could see the skin of her feet through the left one. She was breathing. He watched her chest move. Once, twice, not fast enough. He had seen men look this bad after 3 days without water, 2 without food, and 1 very bad night of cold. She was all 3 of those things at once. She had come a long way on nothing. He said, "My lady." She opened her eyes. They were dark, very dark, and they did not focus right away. He waited. He did not move closer. He did not back away. He crouched there in the road dust and let her come around to the fact of him in her own time. She looked at his face, then at his hands. She was trying to place him in a category, and she could not. He could see that much. He was not what she expected. He was not what she had the word for. The phrase had landed wrong. Not wrong in the way of contempt. Not wrong in the way of pity. Wrong the way a thing lands when you have no shelf to put it on. He reached into his coat and drew out his canteen and held it out. She did not take it. He set it on the ground between them. "Can you stand?" he said. Not a question, a thing he needed to know. She pushed herself up on one hand. The arm shook. He watched it, and didn't reach for her. She got her knees under her, and then, slowly, she got one foot flat on the ground. He waited. Then the other foot. Then she was up, swaying, the full height of her, 6 feet of bone and will at the end of its rope. And she stood. He picked up the canteen and held it out again. This time she took it. He picked up the gelding's reins and turned the horse in the direction of the homestead. He did not say where they were going. He did not explain. He started walking and left her to decide. She followed. The homestead came up slow through the brush. She saw the fences first, then the barn, then the house behind it, low and plain and weathered in the way of structures that have stood a long time without being asked to be more than they were. He had led the gelding the whole way. She had not spoken. He had not spoken. The canyon was quiet in the early morning, and the only sounds were the horses' feet and their own. At the gate, he stopped and tied the horse. He went to the barn and opened it, and came back out without speaking, and went into the house. She stood in the yard. The barn was clean. Not new. The roof had been patched. She could see the newer boards where the old ones had gone. But dry and still, with hay along one wall and a lantern on a crossbeam. He had left 2 blankets folded on a hay bale near the door, a tin cup, a filled water jug, and a plate with dried meat and bread. She stood in the barn doorway and looked at all of it for a long time. Then she went in and sat and ate. Not slow, not fast. She ate the way someone eats who has been a long time without food and has enough sense left not to rush it. She drank the water. She set the cup down and sat with her hands on her knees and did not look at the house. He did not come back. She lay down on the hay bale with the blankets pulled over her, and she did not mean to sleep. But she did. When she woke, it was full dark. She listened. There was no sound from the house. The barn door was still open the way she had left it. He had not locked her in. She lay there for a long time, looking at the dark square of the open door, and then she closed her eyes and slept again. In the morning she was stiff, and her feet ached where the boots had worn through. But she was alive, and the food was still in her, and that was more than the day before. She went to the barn door and looked out. He was already in the yard, working. He did not look up when she came out. She found a place on the ground outside the barn, her back against the wall, and she watched him. He worked for 2 hours. She watched. He did not appear to notice, which she did not believe. He went back into the house and came out a little while later and set something on the porch step. A bowl. She could see the steam from where she sat. He went back inside without looking at her. She did not move for a long time. Then she crossed the yard and looked at the bowl. Grain and something cooked into it, still warm. She picked it up and went back to her wall and ate. She had not thanked him. He had not waited. Later he came out again, and she was still sitting there, and he stopped and looked at her the way he had in the road, taking in the fact of her without expression, and she looked back at him the same way. "What do you want from me?" she said. Not a threat. A thing she needed to know before she could make any calculation at all. He was quiet a moment. "Nothing yet," he said. She sat with that, the way she had sat with everything else he had given her, with no shelf for it, and no word for it, and after a while he went back to work, and she watched him go. Nobody had said she needed to leave. Nobody had said she could stay. She was here. He was here. That was the whole of it, for now. She fixed the fence post on the third morning. She had been up before him, which surprised her, though it did not show. She had walked the near fence line the way she had seen him do, and one post had gone soft in the ground, overnight, leaning at an angle that would bring the whole section down by afternoon. She found a rock and tamped it back and packed the base with what was there, and when she was done, it held. She heard him come out behind her, and she kept working. He looked at what she had done. He did not say anything. He went back around to the far side of the barn, and did not add anything to her portion of the work, and did not take it away. That was the first day. On the second day, she was at the well when he came out in the early morning. The trough was full already. She moved aside and waited to see what he would do. He drew his own water as if she were not there, as if the trough had been filled by the morning and nothing more needed explanation. He carried it to where he needed it, and she watched him and understood that he was not ignoring her. He was including her, the way you include something that is just part of the yard. She did not know if that was better or worse than being noticed. It felt different from what she had expected. She went back to work. On the third day, she found a fence bar lying near the section she had been working, not where it had been left by accident, not where wind or weather could have put it. Just there, on the ground, waiting. She picked it up and used it. They did not speak about any of it. In the evening, she was at the far end of the fence line when the light went red and the canyon walls came alive. She had seen the same light from the clan's ground, from the high ridge they camped below, and she had not thought she would miss the sight of it. She sat with her back against a post and watched the color drain out of the rock, and did not think about anything for a while. He was on the porch when she crossed back toward the barn. He had a fire going in the small iron pot on the porch stones, and he was sitting beside it, looking into it. Not asleep, not watching anything in particular, just there the way he always was at this hour, quiet in a way that was not emptiness. She slowed. She was going to keep walking, but something made her pause. He had something in his hand, small and dark. He was not looking at it exactly, just holding it, the way you hold a thing you have held so often you do not need to look anymore. Then he closed his fingers around it and sat back and went on watching the fire. She did not ask. He did not explain. She went into the barn and lay down in the dark and listened to the canyon, which was the same in all directions, and did not care what had brought her here. She had not left. Not today. Not yesterday or the day before. It was not trust. She was too old for trust to happen that fast, and she had been taught hard about the cost of it. But there was no reason to go that she could name. The road was empty, and the clan was behind her, and this man didn't want anything from her yet, and there was food and a roof that held. That was enough. For now. That was enough. He noticed on the fourth day. She had been loading the repaired fence sections onto the cart when he saw how she held herself, one shoulder drawn in, the movement of her right arm, careful in a way that had nothing to do with the weight of what she was carrying. He did not say anything. He went on with his own work. It was mid-afternoon when he came in from the south field and stopped at the tool shed. He came out with a small cloth roll and set it on the fence post nearest to where she was working, and went back toward the barn without looking at her. She looked at the roll for a long time. Then she picked it up. She took it to the barn and unrolled it on the hay bale. Clean cloth, a glass bottle with something sharp smelling in it, a curved needle and thread. Someone had kept this kit well. She sat for a while, and then she cleaned the wound and wrapped what she could reach, and wrapped it tight, and when she was done, she sat with her hands flat on her knees and breathed through it. At dusk, she was by the south wall when he came by. She had been trying to reach the back of the dressing with one hand and failing, and when he stopped, she knew by the way he stopped that he had already seen. He looked once, a question in it. She turned without speaking, and he worked. He did not make it fast. He did not make it slow. He dressed the back of the wound the way he would have dressed any task that needed doing, with a steady hand and no wasted motion. And when it was done, he tied it off and stepped back. "Thank you," she said. It was the first time she had said it. She had not planned to. The words came out before she could consider them, and she was not sure she would take them back even if she could. He said nothing. He picked up the cloth roll and the bottle and went towards the house. She sat by the fire that evening for the first time without planning to. She was there, and the fire was warm, and there was no other reason. He was on his side of it, the way he always was. After a while she said a word. Not to him exactly. Not to herself either. It came out like something dropping from a high place. She had not said the name aloud since she left. Not on the road. Not in the barn. Not in any of the days since. "Gar," she said. He looked at her. "My clan," she said. That was their name. He was quiet a moment. Then he said it back. He said it like a man who had never heard the sound before, which was the correct way to say he had not. She shook her head. "Not Gar. Gar. Here." She touched her throat, back where the sound lives. "You have to mean it from deeper." He tried again. "Better," she said. It was not friendship. It was not trust, not the way she understood that word. It was just the name of a thing that was hers, and now it had been said aloud in this place, and it did not vanish when it was said, and she did not die of the saying. She looked down at the cord at her wrist. She had worn it since before she was old enough to remember why. A cord with 3 small bones knotted into it. Clan work, the kind the women of the Gar wove for their children at naming time. She had kept it on through everything. She had not taken it off in the road. She had not taken it off in the barn. He saw it. She saw him see it. He said nothing. He went back to watching the fire. That was all. It was enough for one night. It was not planned. She was there, and the food was hot, and he set 2 bowls, and that was the whole of it. He sat on the ground beside the fire. The chairs were there, both of them, but he did not take them. He sat the way he might have sat on campaign, cross-legged with the bowl in his hands, and it did not seem to occur to him that this was unusual. She was on the other side. She watched him for a moment, and then she looked at her food. They ate. When the bowls were empty, he kept his hands around his and looked into the fire. And she watched the fire too, and the silence was the kind they had been building toward for a week without knowing it. She said, "What is the thing you carry?" Not a question. A thing she had been sitting with since the night she first saw it in his hand. He reached into his coat pocket and held it out on his palm without speaking. A smooth, dark stone. No bigger than his thumb. Ordinary, except that he carried it. "It belonged to someone who is gone," he said. She looked at it. He did not offer to let her hold it, and she did not reach for it. "My wife," he said. He did not elaborate. He put the stone back in his pocket. She sat for a long time with that. Then she said, "The elder of the Gar had made a decision. He had agreed to give a young man of the clan to a settlement 2 days east in exchange for the settlement's silence about the clan's crossing of their land the winter before. The young man had a wife and a child not yet walking, not as a servant, as a bond. The settlement's word for it was labor. The clan's word for it was debt. Her word for it was neither. She had stood before the full clan and said it was wrong, that the debt was the elder's to carry, not the young man's, that what was being called a trade was something else. The elder cast her out before the week was done. "I knew he would," she said. "I said it anyway." He listened. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say she was brave. He looked at the fire for a while, and then he said, "I've been told I was done with something, before I was done with it too." Not the same. Not even close to the same. He was not saying it was. Just. Parallel, just. Here is something I recognize, even if the reasons are different. Just. I know the shape of that from the inside. She looked at him sideways. She reached up and worked the cord off her wrist and held it in her open hand between them. The 3 bones caught the firelight. She did not offer it to him. "Naming cord," she said. "They make them at birth. The bones are from the naming fire." He looked at it for a long time. He did not reach for it. "What's your name?" he said. She was quiet. It had been a while since anyone had asked. "Mara," she said. "Among the Gar." He said it back to her the way he had said the clan name, careful and a little wrong, and this time she did not correct him. It was close enough. The silence came back. Not comfortable, not what you would call peaceful, but not hostile either, and not empty. It was the kind of silence that forms around 2 people who have both said a true thing and have found, to their surprise, that the other didn't flinch. After a long time, she said, very quietly, "No one has called me that before. My lady." He was looking at the fire. "I didn't know what else to call you," he said. She considered this for a long time. She turned the cord over in her fingers and looked at it, and did not say anything. The fire burned down. Neither of them moved to add wood. 3 weeks, a month. The time moved in work, and the work moved in silence. The south fence line was done. The post she had fixed on the 3rd morning was still holding, and the section he had been meaning to replace since winter was replaced now, and the whole line from the canyon road to the barn gate was tight and true. The barn roof held through 2 hard rains. The near field had been turned and planted, and was showing green in rows you could walk the length of without tripping. None of this had been discussed. It had been done. That was the thing about working alongside someone. After long enough, you stopped noticing who had done what, and started seeing only what was done. One morning, he came out to find the water trough had been reset. The base had been crooked since he bought the place, listing slightly so that it needed propping on one side, and he had not mentioned it because it was the kind of thing you stop seeing when you have seen it long enough. She had reset the whole thing level some time before dawn while he was still inside, and the prop was gone, and the trough was straight, and it would not need propping again. He did not say anything about it. That night he left an extra portion outside the barn door on the flat stone where she had taken to sitting in the evenings. He went inside and did not watch. They were working on the gate hinges one afternoon, she holding the gate while he set the pin, and he said without thinking, "Hold it there, my lady, just another moment," and kept working, and she held it, and neither of them paused. She thought about it later. When it had stopped being a thing she flinched at, she could not find the day. It had just gone that way at some point, from a sound that landed wrong to a sound that meant him and the work and the next thing, and nothing more particular than that. Among the Gar, there had been men who called her things she had flinched at for years and never got used to. This had gone the other direction. She did not know how to feel about that, so she did not try. She was eating on the flat stone one evening when he came by on the way back from the far field and stopped for a moment. She knew he saw it. The naming cord was lying beside the bowl, not on her wrist, not put away. Just there, beside the food, in the same space as the rest of the evening. He looked at it for one moment and went inside. The homestead was not quiet the way it had been when he first showed it to her. That quiet had been the quiet of a single person keeping himself company. This was different. The sounds were different. 2 sets of tools, 2 sets of boots on the boards, the barn with someone in it at night. Not noisy, still quiet. But the way a yard is quiet when it has more than one life in it, and all of them are tending to what needs to be done. He did not say what he was thinking about that. She did not say what she was thinking about it either. There had been a time when that would have seemed like nothing. It did not seem like nothing now. He did not know exactly when it had changed. She did not ask him. The rider came up the canyon road on a Tuesday morning, moving at a trot. Not in a hurry. Not cautious either. The pace of someone on official business who has no reason to rush. He was a short man, in a coat with a county seal on it, riding a bay horse that had done this sort of errand before. He pulled up at the gate and sat there and waited in the way that official men wait, patient and deliberate, with a clipboard across his saddle. The veteran heard him from the barn. He came around the corner of the house and walked to the gate without hurrying. She was already in the yard behind him. She had seen the rider from the far fence line and come in when she saw the coat, and she stood where she stood, not close to the gate, but visible. The official looked at her, then at the veteran. Then he cleared his throat. "Morning," he said. "I'm from the county land office. We've had some inquiries from settlers on the northern road about an orc on this property." "What kind of inquiries?" the veteran said. "The concerned kind. They want to know the situation." "The situation is, she works here." The official made a note. He looked at her again. She did not look away. She did not step forward or back. She was simply there, in the middle of the yard, where anyone with eyes could see her. "Is she here by her own choice?" the official said. "Yes," the veteran said. "You're aware of what she is?" "Yes." "Any history of trouble with her?" "Problems?" "No." The official looked at the property. The gate was new. The fence line running south was tight and well kept. The field beyond the barn was showing crop, and there was no rot in the boards of the barn wall from where he sat. A working property in better shape than most on this road, by a fair margin. He made another note. "I have no specific complaint to bring," he said. "There's no law that prevents this, strictly speaking. But I want you to know, others are aware she's here. I'm not the only one who's received questions." He looked at her one more time and then back at the veteran. "I'd expect more visitors." "I appreciate the warning," the veteran said. The official nodded once. He reined his horse around and rode back up the road at the same steady trot he'd arrived with, and in a few minutes the sound of the hoofbeats was gone and the canyon was quiet again. They stood at the gate for a while. She knew what it meant. The official was the first wave, not the last. She had known that as soon as she saw the coat with the seal on it, and she had come into the yard anyway and stood where she stood because there was nothing else to do about it. Hiding would not have helped. Hiding was not something she did anymore. He said nothing for a long time. The official's horse was already out of sight. He picked up the tool he had set down when he heard the hoofbeats and went back to what he had been doing. She stood at the gate one more moment. He had not asked her to leave. She had not offered. The official had ridden away with no charge and no order, and the property still looked the way it had looked before he came. The gate, the fences, the field going green. That was today's count. That was what she had. She went back to the fence line and picked up where she had left off. 4 days after the county man's visit, she was in the south field when she heard the horses. She counted them before she looked. 3, no, 4. She knew by the rhythm of it. She turned. They were not human. 4 orcs on horseback, coming down the canyon road at a walk. Their horses were good. Not frontier horses, not the rough working stock of this road, but the clan's own, deep-chested and dark. The one in front was older than the others, grey at his temples, a heaviness in how he sat the saddle that was not tiredness, but authority. He was dressed in the Gar's colours, grey-green and deep brown, and around his left arm was a cord she recognised, the mark of a second voice. He had been in the circle when the elder made the ruling. She did not run. She set down the tool in her hand and walked back toward the gate. He was already there when she came through the barnyard. Not the veteran, the representative. He had pulled up outside the gate and sat waiting on his horse, and his riders waited behind him. He had not tried to open the gate. He was a man who understood the value of being seen to wait. The veteran came out of the barn. He read the yard in one look and came to stand at her shoulder, and neither of them opened the gate. The representative looked at her for a long time. What he saw was not what he had expected. She could see that plainly. He had come prepared for a certain kind of scene. He had not come prepared for this. She was upright and fed, and there was no desperation in how she held herself. He had come to find something diminished. He found her standing. When he spoke, it was in the Gar's tongue, not the common language, which meant the words were for her alone. "The cast-out stands," he said. "The verdict of the elder stands. You left your kin's ground in debt, and the debt does not vanish because you have found a roof. You will come with us. There is business unfinished." She said nothing. "The rites were not completed," he said. "That is a matter between you and the Gar. It has nothing to do with this man." She said nothing. He switched to the common language then. He looked at the veteran. "This is not your affair," he said. "Clan law is its own law. What is between us and ours does not fall under the authority of a human deed or a human court." The veteran looked at him for a moment. Then he said, "She's on my land. She was the Gar's before she was on your land. She's on my land now. She's here by her choice. That's enough for me." The representative looked at the yard. The gate was solid. The fences behind it were sound. The field was green and tended. The barn was sound. There were 2 people standing in front of him, and one of them was not moving, and the other one was the kind of man who would still be standing after most men had already left. "The rites must be completed," the representative said. His voice was still formal, still the language of the law. The cast-out that is not closed follows the cast-out. She carries this wherever she goes. It does not stop because she has moved to a new piece of ground. That's between her and whoever needs it completed, the veteran said. Today she's here. Today this is her ground. Neither side moved. The representative's riders stayed where they were, behind him, making no advance. The gate between them was closed, and nobody had moved to open it. Something was being counted. The veteran could see it in how the representative's eyes moved across the property, to the riders behind him, to the closed gate, and came back to the two people standing on the far side of it. Nobody moved. The representative sat his horse and looked at the two of them through the gate, and the riders behind him sat their horses and looked, and the canyon was very still. Then Mara spoke. She did not raise her voice. She let a moment pass, and then she spoke in the Gar's tongue. She said it the way she would say anything simply true. The cast-out came down on her. She had walked out of the clan's ground with nothing, and she had not died. She was on different ground now, not the Gar's, not under the Elder's voice or the Elder's law. She was not asking to come back. She was not asking for a ruling to be reversed. She was not here begging for anything. She was telling him what he had ridden down here to find, a woman who was still here. The veteran did not move while she spoke. He did not reach for anything. He stood at her shoulder the way he had stood there since the beginning of this, which was the only thing he knew how to offer, and which, it turned out, was the only thing required. The representative looked at him for a long time. He looked at the veteran's hands, which were at his sides, and his face, which was still, and the way he was standing, which was the way a man stands when he has already decided and is simply waiting for the other party to finish. He looked at his own riders, 4 of them, which was enough for some things and not enough for this. The riders were not going to move on their own. He could see that too. They were waiting on him, and what they were waiting to be told was not the thing he had planned on saying. He looked at the property behind the 2 people at the gate, the fence lines, the green field, the barn, all of it evidence of 2 people who had clearly planned on still being here. He looked at her. She was not what he had come to find. He had come to collect something diminished, something that needed the clan's hand to close a door that had been left open. What he had found was a woman standing in the yard of a working homestead on human land with a man at her shoulder who was not going to move. The math was not a difficult one. It just didn't come out the way he had planned. Something crossed his face. Not much. Just the small rearranging of a man who has found different terrain than his map described. He had come for something that was no longer there. What was there instead was a different problem, and one he had not brought the right tools for. The verdict of the Elder does not expire, he said. His voice was still the formal voice, still the language of the ruling. The Gar does not forget where its business is unfinished. We will remember where you are. He reined his horse around. One of the riders caught the motion and turned first, and then the others turned, and they rode back up the canyon road at the same walk they had arrived with, and after a while the sound of hoofbeats was gone, and the road was empty, and the canyon was the same as it had been before any of them came. The veteran and Mara stood at the gate for a long time. He said nothing. She said nothing. The sun was moving, and the shadows went with it, and the canyon went from the flat light of morning to the white heat of midday. Neither of them spoke. They had been at this gate before, the 2 of them, though not on the same side of it. They were on the same side now. At some point, she walked to the porch step and sat down. He came and sat beside her. Not close, just beside. They sat there for a while. The canyon was quiet, the field was green, the gate was closed, and the road beyond it was empty. That was the whole of it for now. A season had passed, near enough. The near field was not what it had been. The rows were up and full, and the whole south quarter smelled like growing things in the morning. The barn roof had not moved. The fences had not moved. The gate stood straight in its frame and did not need lifting to open, the way a gate should work. The well rope was sound. All of this had been true for some weeks now, and neither of them had remarked on it, because there was nothing particular to say. The mornings ran the way mornings run when they have been the same long enough that you stop counting them. She rose before full light. He was usually already out. They did not arrange this. It was just how the place worked. Meals happened at the end of work, and work did not stop because food was ready. You came when you came. The extra portions had stopped being extra some time ago. They were just the portions. The naming cord was on a shelf in the barn. She had put it there one evening without making a decision about it, simply setting it on the shelf and not picking it back up, and there it was, visible from her hay bale when she chose to look, which was not every day. Not something lost. Not something gone. Just something that did not need to be on her wrist every hour for her to know what it was. He still had the stone. She knew this because she still saw it from time to time, a shape in his coat pocket. But the coat stayed on its nail more evenings now. He did not hold the stone in the firelight the way he had when she first saw it. She was carrying a fence bar across the yard one afternoon when he stepped past her on the way to the barn and took one end of it without asking, and they carried it together, and he said, in passing, "Just over here, my lady," and she moved left and they set it down. She said, "Eli." Nothing more. They went back to what they had each been doing. He said nothing. He did not need to. She thought about it later, the way both things had landed. Not the flinch, not the long pause. Just his word for her, and her word for him, and the work, and what came next. She knew what he meant by "my lady" now. Not what the clan had called her. Not what the settlement called anything it could not place. What he called her. The only word he had ever used. She had not known, in the first days, that she would end up knowing his name the way you know the weight of a familiar tool. The days moved. The field stayed green. The canyon was the same red in the evening that it had always been, and the dark came down fast the way it always did, and the porch step was where it had always been. One evening she was at the far fence when something made her look up at the ridge. A figure, small, on the high ground to the north, against the last of the light. Not moving. Just there, looking down at the homestead, the way someone looks when they are deciding something and have not yet decided it. It was not anyone she recognized. It was not anyone from the Gar, not in that posture, not on that horse. Someone else, then. Someone new. She watched the figure for a long time. Then the light went, and the ridge went dark, and the shape was gone. She went inside. But the world beyond the fence had not finished moving. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much.